She tore the satellite receiver off my rooftop with her bare hands, completely unaware that she'd just damaged a piece of federal equipment tied to a NASA-led climate research initiative. Let me rewind a bit and tell you how it all began. Roughly half a year ago, I moved into what I thought would be a quiet, drama-free suburb. After spending years in cramped rental apartments, I finally bought my own house, a cozy place tucked in a peaceful cul-de-sac. I'm Alex, a systems engineer working on a remote collaboration with NASA. What most people didn't realize was that my house doubled as a field node for collecting satellite data. That dish on the roof. It wasn't for cable TV or sports. It was a custom calibrated receiver pulling signals from low Earth orbit satellites, part of an environmental project tracking atmospheric conditions and polar temperatures. Needless to say, that equipment had to stay untouched and operational at all costs. But that's where she came in. Karen, self-declared head of the local homeowners association. I never saw any actual documentation proving she had the right to enforce anything, but she sure acted like she owned the whole block. The very day I moved in, she walked up with a clipboard and a smirk handed me a so-called welcome packet, which was more like a rule book disguised as a pamphlet. No colourful flowers, no kids' toys on the lawn, and her favourite no satellite dishes. I politely tried to explain that this was government-grade tech, not a DirecTV setup. She dismissed it immediately. It's ugly. She said, "No exceptions." I thought she'd eventually lose interest. I figured she was just a nosy neighbor with a little too much free time, but I had no idea how serious she was. About 3 weeks later, I got home to find a scene out of a nightmare. Karen, standing on my roof, had apparently dragged a ladder from who knows where and was forcefully trying to detach the dish. Cables were sparking. I froze. "What on earth are you doing?" I shouted. Without even turning around, she barked, "I warned you, this dish violated HOA standards." And then with one final yank, she ripped the entire unit off and let it crash to the ground. Internal components cracked, wires shredded. My heart dropped. This wasn't just destruction of property, it was an active piece of a federal data stream. Tampering with it could trigger serious alerts. I immediately called the police. At first, they were skeptical. It's not every day someone calls in saying their satellite dish is part of a government network. So I showed them my credentials, IDs, documentation, and the authorization from the climate research team I worked with. That changed everything. I also contacted my supervisor at the lab. Within the hour, I got a call confirming that the signal loss had triggered a security flag on NASA's side. They were already escalating it as a possible interference incident. Suddenly, the local police weren't taking this lightly. They asked Karen to stay where she was, but she still looked smug. "I didn't commit any crime," she scoffed, "just cleaned up an eyesore." The next day, things escalated further. A NASA field investigator visited my property, calm, focused, but clearly concerned when I showed him the busted equipment. "This isn't minor," he said. "You may have lost over a month's worth of atmospheric data." He asked me to compile everything, a timeline, photos, the police report, and any correspondence with the HOA. Thankfully, I still had that ridiculous rule pamphlet Karen had handed me, with the no dishes policy circled in red ink. Meanwhile, Karen was still strutting around like she had done the neighborhood a favor. She even told a few people she handled a techie trying to install illegal hardware. That didn't last long. Later that week, 2 federal agents and a detective showed up at her front door. I watched from across the street as she stood there in her slippers and bathrobe, trying to smile her way out of it. One officer calmly handed her a paper. "You're being investigated for interfering with government operations," he said. She went pale. The news spread like wildfire. Some neighbors were shocked. Others weren't surprised at all. A few even came to me privately and admitted she'd hassled them over ridiculous things. Mailbox colors, lawn patterns, even the kind of curtains they used. Eventually, formal charges were filed. Karen had to pay a hefty fine and cover all damages, including recalibration costs and new hardware installation. NASA even released a public statement vaguely referring to a community dispute leading to a research disruption. No names, but the implication was clear. One local newspaper ran with the headline, "HOA Crackdown Disrupts Climate Study." Karen? She disappeared from the spotlight. cancelled HOA meetings, stopped her patrols, put her house on the market not long after the rest of us decided we'd had enough. A few neighbours and I started a new committee, one based on transparency and fairness. No more rogue enforcement. No more rooftop invasions. The new dish was installed better than ever and backed by a signed agreement from the new neighbourhood board recognising its scientific use. NASA even sent me a letter thanking me for my handling of the incident. Now, whenever I look up at that dish, I can't help but laugh. Karen thought she was removing a violation. Instead, she triggered a federal investigation. So next time someone tells you to remove a dish off your roof, make sure they know it's not just for watching sports, especially when it's linked to something flying in space. If this story blew your mind, imagine what else could be happening behind closed doors in quiet suburbs. Make sure to subscribe for more jaw-dropping true tales, and remember, sometimes power only lasts until real authority knocks on the door.